What if I told you that the Baltimore Ravens find themselves in a familiar situation? Could there be a reunion on the horizon in Baltimore? And Baltimore looks to fill a hole on this roster. All this and more coming up next. But first, Ravens fly. Let's fly. Here we are, stuck in the middle of no man's land. We've already had the NFL draft. The schedule release has been out, and now we just await for OTAs, minicamp, all of these things before the season can start. But before then, there are a lot of little things that the Ravens need to do as far as housekeeping is concerned with this roster. One issue that I've had over the years and one issue that I'm having right now is the Baltimore Ravens continue this wait and see approach. I understand everything is not easy in the NFL, and like you guys love to tell me, this isn't Madden, and I do understand all of these things. But there does come a point in time, there comes situations where the Ravens have to learn from past mistakes and say, you know what, we're not going to repeat these things for a third and a fourth time. And the one thing that I am talking about with this, it goes to contracts. It goes to signing and re-signing players that the Baltimore Ravens want on their team, waiting to see if they fail, waiting to see if they live up to certain production before they decide to give out these contracts. And more times than not, it bites us in the butt.
Your ass, Mr. Postman.
But the one thing is, these things may not affect us for the 2025 season. It is what happens after that. If you do not know, over the weekend, the San Francisco 49ers signed quarterback Brock Purdy to an extension, a whopping extension. He got a 5-year, $265 million extension with $181 million guaranteed. And that's a lot of money. That's a large chunk of change, especially for a Mr. Irrelevant. Never in NFL history have we seen a guy be the last pick of the draft come in and get an extension of this magnitude. Kudos to him for getting his money, averaging $53 million a year when he was averaging $1 million or less throughout his first 3 seasons. And like I've always told you guys, I don't care who it is, I love to see players get their money. Physical sport, taking years off of their lives, they deserve whatever contracts that they get. Now, how this affects the Ravens is, next season, Lamar Jackson's cap hit jumps up to $74 million. That is a cap hit that the Ravens cannot absorb, especially if they want to remain competitive in today's NFL. So the Ravens are going to have to give Lamar another extension the same way that they did Joe Flacco 3 years after he signed his record-setting contract. And this is something that the Ravens knew when they first signed Lamar to that massive deal. They knew that a couple of years down the line, they were going to have to redo the deal, redo the money, and lower his cap hit. My thing is, you knew you had to do it. You knew it was coming. What are you waiting for?
What the hell are you waiting for?
Because my only issue is we just learned from the Derrick Henry saga. Saquon Barkley just got a record-setting extension, which kind of made things a little bit worse for the Ravens when it came to re-signing Derrick Henry or extending Derrick Henry, and they had to give him more money than they probably would have if they would have done this deal earlier. We're doing the same exact thing with Kyle Hamilton. We are going to wait for these other safeties to get paid. Kirby Joseph already got paid. Now he's the highest paid safety in the league. Now somebody else may get paid between now and the time that it's time to re-sign Hamilton, and that price is going to be astronomical. Are we really going to let Kyle get away with playing on that 5th-year option? Are we really going to wait for somebody else to make more money and then bump his price up? And then when we get to a situation where it's like, oh, we love Kyle, he is a pillar of this Ravens defense, but we just can't afford to keep him, when we could have signed him for less money earlier on. And I know this does not affect the 2025 season. Just thinking about the future, just thinking about if the Ravens just so happen to not win the Super Bowl this year.
What you talking about, Willis?
How are things going to look going forward? Because also with Lamar Jackson's bloated cap hit, the Ravens have a lot of key free agents that they have to re-sign. Being that they did not give Tyler Linderbaum his 5th-year extension, they have to give him a new contract. They have to find out what they're going to do with Charlie Cole and Isaiah Likely, if they're going to bring back Mark Andrews. What are you going to do on the offensive line when it comes to Daniel Falele? What about Odafe Owe, who's playing on his 5th-year option this year? What are the Ravens going to do with David Ojabo, which they're probably going to move on from him? And what are you going to do about the pass rush when it comes to Kyle Van Noy, who's in the last year of his deal? And also in the last year of his deal, we have one of the key, most underrated pieces in Justice Hill. He is going into the last year of his deal as well. So that is a lot of free agents that the Ravens are going to have to sign, especially not having as much money as we would like the team to have, because we are always with our backs against the wall when it comes to the salary cap. So I'm thinking that the Ravens have to do something now sooner rather than later when it comes to doing something with these contracts. And speaking of Justice Hill was just voted the most underrated Baltimore Ravens player. For me, I wasn't too high on Justice Hill. His first 2.5 years in the league, I thought he was injury prone. Maybe he did not get enough of an opportunity to play, but he did show his resilience. He did show his value to this team this past season. And being that he is the only member of the 2019 draft that's still on the Baltimore Ravens roster is an impressive thing to me. And he showed up big in key situations last season. Hill rushed 47 times for 228 yards and a touchdown, while also catching 42 passes for 383 yards and another 3 scores. So shout out to Justice Hill, and I know that the Baltimore Ravens re-signing him isn't going to take a lot of money, but it's going to cost them a little bit more than they did on their last extension, because he is actually showing his value to this team. And with Derrick Henry getting a little bit older, we're going to need Justice Hill to up his carries, up his reps, up his snaps, and contribute a little bit more to this team, because we don't want to wear Derrick Henry out. And in other Baltimore Ravens news, the Ravens signed nose tackle John Jenkins. The 35-year-old, 13-year NFL pro comes in and is taking over for the sudden departure of Michael Pierce, who retired. I guess that the team knew, but they did not adequately replace him. Now, the Ravens did take Aeneas Peoples in the draft, but a lot of people don't think that this is enough. The Ravens are pretty thin on the defensive line, and we thought that the Ravens were actually going to go in and attack this position a little bit stronger. Bringing in Jenkins, a run stopper. Yes, he is a little bit on the older side, but last year in 2024, he played a career high in snaps with 609, which kind of shows that he is older, but he is durable. You don't see many guys getting to his age playing more snaps than they ever have in the NFL. Now, he played on a Raiders team that was ranked 13th in the league in run defense. The Ravens last season were number 1. Could that be because that they gave up so many yards via pass rather than just stopping the run? Because I remember the Ravens getting gashed here and there periodically throughout the season, but teams knew that they could throw on them, so why run the ball? So hopefully this 2013 third round pick out of Georgia can come in and make some sort of impact, because the Ravens are pretty thin. We need some guys to come in. He doesn't have to be a starter, but he can be a key rotational piece. I don't think that that should stop the Ravens from going further and looking into bringing in some other guys, because once again, 35 years old, 13 years in the league, a lot of wear and tear on the body, so you don't expect him to play a super high amount of snaps, but come in and do his job. Hopefully the Ravens pass defense should be a lot better. So these are little pieces that the Ravens are bringing in here and there. I just wish that they would have gone younger and brought in somebody else that could make an impact, maybe rush the pass a little bit, not just be particularly solely a run stopper. And another reason I think that the Ravens made this move was because it does not affect the compensatory picks. That is a real one in Baltimore. They do not all the time care about talent. They care about, do I get to keep my comp picks, and do I get to bring in somebody to compete for a spot? Sometimes the comp pick is more important than bringing in a player to help the team win. And this is another thing that I have a problem with. Stop with the damn comp picks and go get guys who can play and make an impact on this team. And speaking of people to bring in and have an impact on this team, with the unfortunate news about our Darius Washington and his injury, the Baltimore Ravens, what are they going to do about bringing in a third safety? Because we know that this is an important component, an important part of this team. I can't even get the words out because it's ridiculous to me that they place such a high priority on a position that doesn't really too much affect games, and they're looking for a third one. But if the Ravens do go out there and look for a third safety, could there possibly be a reunion in Baltimore? There has been speculation that the Ravens may be looking into bringing back safety Chuck Clark, who spent a few seasons with the Jets after leaving the Ravens, but he hasn't been that effective because he's been pretty much injured. But he does know Baltimore, he does know the scheme, he's very familiar, and we're not asking him to come in and be the quarterback of this defense. We're not asking him to come in and be a starter. We're asking him to come in and play limited snaps as that third safety. So could a reunion be possible? And with the possibility of bringing Chuck Clark back, the Ravens actually have the possibility of bringing back Marcus Williams. When I heard that, I almost choked on my beverage. All that we went through with him, that whole saga, and it's a possibility that he could return to Baltimore on a much cheaper deal. But also out there in free agency land, you have safety Julian Blackmon, formerly of the Colts. I think he was a top 20 free agent pickup who has not been signed yet. You have former 6th overall pick Jamal Adams, who was rumored to the Ravens long ago. Is he still as talented as he once was? Probably not, but once again, we're looking to fill the third safety spot. And last but not least to me, the guy that I always wanted to come to Baltimore was safety Justin Simmons. Now, he did have a down year in Atlanta, but he still is one of the better safeties in the league. And for the third time, we're not looking for someone to come in and start particularly. Maybe we are. Maybe we need somebody to start at that spot just to wait to see what Malachi Starks has to get him acclimated and not just throw him into that fire. And to me, Justin Simmons would be that guy who can come in and start immediately. A former All-Pro, the guy who's picked off Patrick Mahomes the most in Patrick Mahomes' career. And being that we have him on the schedule this season, bring somebody in that knows him. Bring somebody in who you can pick his brain on how to slow him down and potentially stop him. Because the Ravens have a gauntlet of a schedule coming out. The Ravens have to start strong when it comes to the 2025 season. So bringing in somebody that can start and allow our rookie to progress instead of just throwing him into the fire. Because Malachi coming in, he's got to go up against Josh Allen, Jared Goff, and Patrick Mahomes in the first 4 weeks of the season. And lastly, I was just reading an article on the Buffalo Bills, the only team in the NFL that is favored right now in each and every game that they play in 2025. You know what that means? That means this Buffalo Bills team they will no longer be underrated. You cannot use the narrative that Josh Allen needs help. If his team is favored to win every game against every opponent that he plays, that means you believe that this team is very talented enough to go win a Super Bowl, talented enough to do the things that you expect them to do and go 17-0. So when it comes to this year's MVP voting, I guess we're going to have to go off of merit, stats, and talent, not the narrative of, well, he didn't have much to work with, because he has a lot to work with. He's building on what he had last season. The Bills also brought in wide receiver Josh Palmer from the Chargers. They came in and drafted Prather out of Maryland, who in the 7th round I think could be a steal for them, along to go with Keon Coleman in his second year, Khalil Shakir, who's just got an extension, James Cook, 1,000-yard back the last couple of seasons, so he has the talent. Then on defense, you bring in a Joey Bosa and a Larry Ogunjobi. They brought in a guard to help solidify this already strong offensive line. So the Buffalo Bills have a team that's built to win a Super Bowl now. So I don't want to hear when it comes time for MVP voting, Josh did more with less. Josh he had to do it all himself. Because if you look at last season, what happened was they took the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. They ran the ball more. Even the season before, once they fired offensive coordinator, the dude from Miami that I don't like, Ken Dorsey. When they fired Ken Dorsey, they started running the ball more. And it's amazing to me that this team starts to win when you take the ball out of your quarterback's hands. You don't give him more responsibility, you give him less, and your team starts to do better. So does that say MVP to you guys? But as of right now, Josh Allen is the league MVP, and I have to respect him as such. But going into next season, let's just go statistically off what these quarterbacks do and go based off the merit of that, and not this narrative or this DEI MVP award that we have to give out to somebody because he's been in the top 5 voting for the last several years. So, he's got to win it sometime. If he was the best player last year, he's the best player last year. But do not give out sympathy votes. Do not give out the Joel Embiid MVP award just because. So next season, we're going to see. It's going to be a tight race between Lamar and Josh for the MVP. There may be a couple other guys that slide in there, but I do think that those two guys are the front runners. And we shall see, based on statistics, especially with Lamar getting better each and every season, who the MVP for 2025 is going to be.